Listen, I'm very proud of Tiny, Phil, and all of you that's in this room. What you're doing, not only for yourselves, but your families and your community, is just so awesome. And so I'm so proud of you guys for right where you're at. You know, one of the things that, I've learned is that you got to take care of yourself right now, right where you're at. And so I'm very proud of all of you, and very proud of Tiny and Phil and all the guys that's working so hard to make this Warriors Project happen. Dale, thank you for all you do. Such an awesome contribution to the community, and everything that he does to come along people in recovery and families, and try to work and advocate for change. So, most of you know my story. My son Tyler was a pretty decent athlete. I get to say all the nice things. I'm his dad. You know what I mean? So I can sit up here and brag and tell you how great my kid was, like every dad. But he was a pretty talented kid. He graduated high school, magna cum laude. He was on a golf and academic scholarship at Walsh University. In 2013, he was junior runner-up Mr. Ohio in a bodybuilding show. And he broke his right arm 4 times. He had 2 surgeries on his right elbow. And the first surgery was at age 11, and the second surgery was at age 18. And he got addicted to the opiate pain medication, which ultimately led him to heroin, which is a pretty familiar story. Probably a lot of people in the room. Story is very similar. And so Tyler was in and out of rehab facilities over a 5-6 year period. Dale helped us at that time get a sponsorship and help get him into treatment in Michigan. And so he was in and out of treatment for several years. He had recently just come home from a sober living facility in Florida for 6 months. This was in June of 2014. And he had relapsed in September of 2014. And on September 28th, 2014, he was in the process of overdosing. And the person he was with took him to a vacant lot on the corner of Arlington and Alfred in Akron and left him there to die, dumped him in the field. And so, ever since that day, my family and I, and my wife and my 2 daughters, have tried to take the worst thing that could ever happen to us as parents and try to use it to make a difference. So my family formed a nonprofit organization called Breaking Barriers, Hope is Alive. And initially it was just a Facebook page, just trying to bring awareness, trying to talk about it throughout the community. Some of you are familiar, my daughter and a couple other daughters from Lake High School who also had older brothers overdose in our community. Within a year, we had three overdoses with three boys dying within a year in Hartville, Lake Township. Quote, where drugs aren't, where heroin's not, or however you want to look at it. So these 3 girls started talking within a couple months of my son's death. And my youngest daughter, who was a senior in high school, she was only 17 years old. She was a part of this group, and they started speaking and telling their story. At that time, I'm 2 months into the loss of my son. I can't put 2 words together. And here, my youngest daughter, who's 17 years old, is leading our family and help telling our story and help trying to educate the community and bring awareness. And that was really the jump start to what we started to do from there. So, like I said in the beginning, it was just really a Facebook page, and it was called Breaking Barriers, with this logo with the green fist kind of breaking through, trying to bring awareness throughout the community. Then last year, my wife did a project called Hope is Alive, and the intent of that project is we put some backpacks together, and to get out through the community in Akron. And so we started trying to raise a little bit of money. We were able to put 36 backpacks together, and my wife volunteers at Rahab Ministries down in Akron. And Rahab works specifically with women who are maybe caught up in addiction and or prostitution. And so my wife volunteers down there. My wife's name is Shelley. And so they decided to get these backpacks together. And what we did is we took names from our community who have lost a loved one, and we put their name on these backpacks. And we had the families maybe write a story about my son and Dale's son and others that have lost a family member. And we did it in honor of them to try to bring awareness. And so we did 36 backpacks, and we put them out right around Thanksgiving through Christmas of last year. And we called that project Hope is Alive, trying to encourage people and offer them hope. And so out of that, our foundation, our nonprofit organization is called Breaking Barriers, Hope is Alive. And obviously our hope is in Jesus Christ. We know that there's nothing that we can do on our own. I can't not have forgiveness in my heart by myself. It's only by the grace of God that I'm able to forgive and try to pick up and move forward. And, I have a little bit of anger in me. I'm a little bit ticked off. I'm pretty fired up, to be totally honest, to what happened to my son, just like all of you would be, and any parent would be. But if I act in anger, I'm going to, unfortunately, probably be in jail. And I don't want to do that. That's a loss to my family and everything else. So we're trying to act in love. And so I've learned that, I have to forgive a whole lot of people. I have to forgive the drug dealer. I have to forgive the person who dumped my son's body in a field like a piece of trash. I have to forgive the doctors that gave opiates to a kid. But most of all, I had to learn to forgive myself. See, I was ashamed to talk about my son's addiction. I was embarrassed, okay? And so one of the things we're doing is we're really getting out there and telling our story and encouraging other families to start talking, because this is an epidemic. You are not unique if you're caught up in this, okay? And when you are caught up in it, and your families, you feel like you're the only person on the face of the earth that's going through such a thing. And families have no idea what to do. There's just, and if you've been in it a while, you really feel like there's no hope. As Phil talked about, 180 overdoses since July 5th. I mean, that's insane. At the time of my son's death, he had exhausted our insurance. We were exhausted financially because we were in and out of rehab facilities. And he was actually put on a 3-week waiting list at the time of his death in Summit County to get help. And obviously he died in that 3-week waiting period. And today in Summit County, that waiting list is 14 weeks for men and 4 weeks for women. And I'm here to tell you that that is just unacceptable. That is just unacceptable. If you have cancer, if you have diabetes, if you have heart disease, you can go get treatment right now. And I can tell you, Tiny and I and Dale and others are going to work till there's no end to get that corrected. I promise you. I promise you. We're going to work to get that in. So, listen, what I do full-time in my real life is I'm the president of Teamsters Local 24 in Akron, Ohio. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. And so I've worked full-time for the local union for 20 years. And I've been fortunate enough to serve in that position every 3 years. I have to get elected. It's been a privilege for me to serve the members in Akron of the Teamsters Union and Local 24. But I've also had the opportunity to build some relationships and to create some credibility, I think, within the Teamsters Union. So we formed our nonprofit in March of 2016. Our actual date is February 22nd, 2016. And like every nonprofit, we start with zero money because that's where you start. You're peddling out your own money to try to get the fees paid, and you're just plowing the field doing the best you can. And so we had an open house of some family members and closest friends to come down, and we told them what our mission was. We told them what we were trying to do. And so we raised $3,000 or $4,000 that really got us up and running, and to start doing what we were trying to do. And then we're having a golf outing August 21st in Tyler's honor. It's the first annual golf outing. As I told you, at the time of Tyler's death, he was on a golf and academic scholarship at Walsh University. So that was going to be our big fundraiser. But I wrote a letter to the General President Hoffa, and yes, it is Hoffa. It is his son, Hoffa Jr. The old man is not around anymore. And Hoffa Jr. is the General President of the Teamsters Union. And I wrote a letter to him, and I said, listen, we're in the middle of an epidemic, an opiate painkiller epidemic. And the union has always led in these type of situations and in our communities to give back and to help. And I kind of told him our story, and I told him we formed this nonprofit, and I told him I think we need to pass the resolution to say that the union's going to help lead this fight. Well, when I wrote the letter, you don't know what kind of feedback you're going to get. You don't know if you're going to say, they're going to say, okay, we're all in, or hey, we got other bigger fish to fry, so you just don't know. But I did get a call back pretty quickly and said, hey, Travis, we agree with you. We're going to give you an opportunity to speak at the Teamsters International Convention. So every 5 years, the Teamsters Union has a convention. And the Teamsters Union makes up 1.4 million members across the United States, Canada, and Puerto Rico. We are the largest union in North America, and I will also say the strongest. I get to say that, okay? So they called me back and said, Travis, we're going to give you an opportunity to speak, and we're going to show one of the news articles that was recently showed on TV about breaking barriers. And we're going to talk a little briefly about some of the things you've done, and we'll give you an opportunity to speak to the convention delegates. So I did that early in June 29th, I think, was the actual date that I was able to give a presentation. Again, keep in mind that there's probably 5,000 people in the room at the Teamsters convention. So I told our story. And I told our story. I hit them with the numbers of the opiate epidemic. 4 out of 5 heroin users first began with opiate pain medicine. Right now in the state of Ohio, they're saying 200,000 people are addicted to heroin. 200,000. Every 19 minutes in the United States, somebody dies of a drug overdose. I hit them with those numbers, and those numbers are staggering. And unless you've been affected or you've lived it, sometimes you just kind of move on. But unfortunately, because the epidemic, if it isn't specifically in your family, it's probably your neighbor. And so now everybody knows somebody, either directly related in their family or in their neighborhood. So I told our story, and my wife was there, and my oldest daughter, who is 22 years old, Tana, she recently just graduated from Walsh University. And so after I told our story, kind of went off to the side, and delegates started coming to the mic and pledging support for breaking barriers in an effort to help us. The first donation off the floor was $10,000. The next donation was $10,000. The next donation was $50,000. And for the next hour and 45 minutes, delegates from across the floor, all across the United States, Canada, and Puerto Rico, raised $1.4 million for breaking barriers. Woo! So one of the things I say, if you didn't believe in God before I started speaking, maybe you can believe in God now, because everybody likes that tangible evidence that there's a God, and this faith, this walk with God is really all about faith. God don't really have to do tricks to make you believe in him, okay? But he does do miracles in people's lives. And so, listen, you can't explain something like that. I can't explain something like that, but I can tell you that we're going to use that money to make a difference. We're going to go to work, and we're going to work hard. And one of the things that my wife and I, and this was her vision, not mine, but hers, was ultimately our goal was to buy the property where they found our son and put a treatment facility right there on that property. Which, when you're a 3 months old organization, you almost can't even say that out loud, because everybody kind of rolls their eyes at you and go, okay, that's a nice dream, good luck with that, and here's $50. Right? That's kind of how that happens. And so my wife would be saying it, man, because this is her mission. She's saying it. I'm like, hey, Shell, I don't, that's a little bit of a dream here, So, but I told at the delegates, I gave them that. I said, listen, our big time mission, our real goal here is to purchase the property where they found our son and put a treatment facility right there on that property. Now, what bigger statement can you make in Akron with 180 overdoses, and somebody dumped, left there to die, that we take that and put a treatment facility right there on that property to try to give back and help in our community. And by the grace of God, I really believe that's going to happen. That's going to happen. And I can promise you that we're going to work really hard to make that happen. So, you come back, I come back from the convention and, just a lot of things, we're getting a lot of media coverage because, you don't raise $1.4 million in an hour and 45 minutes and nobody talk about it. So we're getting some media attention, which is bringing awareness to the epidemic in our communities. And that's a good thing. So my wife and I, we get called, by Channel 3 News and says, hey, we want to do an interview with you. And we've been working with this family in Canton, whose daughter, Erica Hall, that some of you are probably familiar with, has been missing for 6 months. As a matter of fact, we're doing a fundraiser with them tonight to try to raise money that they're going to offer as a reward to try to help find their daughter. So I immediately thought of their family, and I called them and I said, hey, come to this interview with us and bring pictures of your daughter. Let's get pictures on her on national TV right tonight. And that was 2 days after we got back. And so I was really, really proud that we could try to help that family right away with just some of the exposure that we got. So one other thing I'd like to kind of touch on that you may or may not be familiar with, Tiny talked a little bit about the Good Samaritan. As you may or may not be aware of, there is a Good Samaritan law that was recently passed in the state of Ohio. I testified twice at the State House and at the Senate Judiciary Committee and told our story on House Bill 249, trying to offer immunity for someone who, if in fact is in the process of an overdose and they call 911, they get immunity and won't be charged with any crimes, which to me, that's not real hard to figure out. A bigger crime is leading somebody and leaving them to die than, a minor misdemeanor of drug paraphernalia or under the influence or whatever they charge you with, which I find to be a bunch of crap. Now, I said that a lot nicer in front of the Senate Judiciary Committee. But so I was able to tell our story a couple times. It was originally House Bill 249, and it was not coming out of the House. And State Representative Sprague, who I was working with, he got hold of a couple senators, and they attached the bill to actually an alcohol hit and run bill. and invited me back down to talk to the Senate. And I'm proud to say that the governor signed that into law a couple days before we left to go out to the Teamsters convention. And so Shelley and I was able to be there when the governor signed the bill, along with a whole lot of other people who have been advocating for a Good Samaritan law. And so, those are ways that we can all make a difference. Listen, I often say that, God didn't let this happen to me or to my family to torture us, but to give us an opportunity to help others and try to make a difference. Now, I don't want to be dishonest with you and say it doesn't feel like torture at times. It does. And Dale understands that. Okay, and I'm sure there's probably other people in this room that have lost a friend or a loved one to this epidemic. And, so what we're going to do is we're going to work real hard to try to take our story that God gave us and try to make a difference. And it's, I don't want to act like, it's like 22 months since Tyler's death. Sometimes I don't even know if it's real. Sometimes I think he's going to come walking in, and you don't. But that's the tough part of it. But everything I tried to teach my son as a parent kind of keeps coming back to me. I can almost hear Tyler in my ear go, "Dad, you told me this. Now let's go do it. Dad, you believed in this. Come on now, let's go do it." And I think that's what really gives me the strength to try to get out and fight and try to make a difference. One of the things I always try to tell people in recovery, and I'm not in recovery, so I've never walked in your shoes, so I really can't really speak on the issue, but I did watch my son try to walk in recovery for almost 6 years. And one of the things I recognized is that he really had a hard time forgiving himself. He really had a hard time forgiving himself that he disappointed his parents, or he let me down again, or whatever. And what I would tell you in recovery, by the grace of God, I'm able to forgive the drug dealer. I'm able to forgive the person who dumped his body in a field. I'm able to forgive the doctor who prescribed opiates. And by the grace of God, I'm able to forgive myself. And I encourage all of you to forgive yourself and move forward. You deserve to be okay. You deserve to have a productive life. And you can do it. And you can do it. And so the brother in the back that had 30 days sober and the brother that has 40 days sober, God bless you guys, and fight today. Fight today to stay clean. And you're in with a group of people that love you. Tiny and I have, we're kind of working together. We're partnering together. We're trying to make a difference. And ultimately, as hopefully we get a treatment facility up and running in Akron, that we're going to continue to build the Warriors Project with people that's in recovery. And that's our goal, and that's how we're going to work together. Listen, this is a brutal epidemic disease that we're all faced with here. But one of the things I've learned from my wife, and I'm sure Dale can tell stories and experience the same thing. It's one thing for us as fathers to deal with the loss of a child, but I think even harder for me is to watch my wife have to deal with the loss of her son, her oldest son. And that just kills me, man. It's so, I can't fix it. I can't help her. All I can do is just try to love her and watch her. And one of the things I've learned from her is that she never stopped loving. She never stopped helping others. She kept working in the community and trying to make a difference as we were battling our own demons. And we were always, in turmoil and a mess, and she just kept loving others. And what I would say to all of you is that love covers a multitude of sins. And I believe that if we tack this epidemic with love, we can make a difference. We can make a difference. And people need loved right where they're at. Right where they're at. Some of you are probably aware of the drug dealer who just recently got charged in Akron. He went to trial, and the sentencing was yesterday. He ended up with 21 years, ultimately with the drug trafficking charges, the involuntary manslaughter. He got 10 years for that, and when it all totaled out, he got 21 years. And that's a tough one. That's a tough one because, listen, obviously he needs to, be held accountable. And I'm going to tell this story because it's really twofold. The mother of the daughter who lost her daughter had been working with us in Breaking Barriers, and she invited us, Shelley and I, to come to the sentencing to be with the family when they sentenced the drug dealer. And so we did do that. We went down there and tried to support the family. And what I seen was very similar to my own family. Is the mother had forgiveness in her heart for the drug dealer. She recognized she had to have forgiveness and move forward, and you can't harbor anger and you can't harbor that stuff. But I also noticed that the grandparents, who are a little older, because I specifically talked to the grandmother, wasn't quite there. And I think that's a little bit of generations, a little bit of difference, justice and those kind of things. And she told me, she said, Travis, I can't forgive him. And I go, let me just tell you that none of us can have forgiveness in our own heart. It's only by the grace of God that we're able to have forgiveness on something like this. And that you're entitled to be angry, and you're entitled to be ticked off, and you're entitled to be mad. But God, if you trust him, Jesus Christ, will help you get to that point of forgiveness, and you'll be able to move forward with your life. And so it was good for us to be there. Now, let me give you the flip side of that thing. And my wife picked it up right away. So the drug dealer, once I heard his story, which, everybody's got a story. This kid, he's not a kid now, he's 30-some years old. But his deal was he witnessed a couple murders at a real young age. He was in the juvenile detention home for most of his youth. His dad, his real father, he watched him get murdered. And so this kid and he's not a kid, he's 30-some years old, but he had seen all this crap in his life. And I'm not saying that gives you any right to do what he did, or, I'm not trying to justify anything that he did. I'm going to make that crystal clear. But he had some stuff happen to him too. And one of the things that my wife and I noticed when we got back home, and we were both, there's no victory really in this kind of thing, right? There's no victory. It doesn't bring their daughter back, right? And I recognized that right away for me, that it didn't matter if this guy got 4 years or 40 years, it is not going to change my circumstance. And the only one that can change my circumstance is the grace of God, and then me trying to be attentive to that to move forward. And so my wife and I got home and we started talking about it. And, there was some closure for the family. They were certainly content, hey, justice was served and those kind of things. But this is the kind of heart my wife has. And my wife said, can you believe it that there was one person that came to sit in the hearing room for the drug dealer, and it was his stepdad. He had no other family or no other friends that came with him. And wow, that's pretty heartbreaking in itself to me. When you look at this thing full-fold, it was sad. And so my wife and I talked about that a little bit, and we were both like, hey, we got to pray for forgiving hearts, and that a heart like God that can forgive us. Sin is sin. And you know, it's just, it was actually heartbreaking, to be honest with you, as I sat there and watched the whole thing unfold. And when we were in that position, I encouraged the prosecution to plea bargain the case out. And in our case, the drug dealer got 4 years. He was an 18-year-old kid. He was an 18-year-old kid that sold the lethal dose of heroin, fentanyl, to Tyler that ultimately killed him. And I accepted right away that it didn't matter whether he got 4 years or 40 years, that it wasn't going to bring my son back. So I just refused to get caught up in it. And I just knew that I had to have forgiveness in my heart. And so by the grace of God, that when he was sentenced, I was able to speak at the sentencing. And the hardest thing I've ever done, it's easy to sit here in front of you and say, hey, you know, you got to have forgiveness. It's easy to sit here and say that. One of the hardest things I ever had to do is I had to look this kid in the face and tell him I forgive him, you know. A lot easier said than done when we're required to do the things that God really wants us to do. So, you know, this is a brutal, brutal thing, but what you guys are doing, what Tiny's doing, and Phil and Dale and all of you, we're going to make a difference, and we're going to offer hope. We're going to offer hope to what some people say is a hopeless situation. And I just refuse to accept that. I just refuse to accept that. We're going to offer hope through our faith in Jesus Christ. We're going to stand up and we're going to fight every day for people in recovery and for families that are caught up in this. And we're going to make a difference. We're going to make a difference. And I'll say one more thing and then I'll stop rambling. Somebody asked me, you know, pretty quickly, they said, hey, Travis, you raised $1.4 million. You got enough money. When are you going to stop? Or what's your thought? And my immediate response was, right now in Summit County, it's 14 weeks for a waiting list to get help. And I said, I'm not stopping until there's no waiting list. Till there's no waiting list. That's when you stop working. And this is accepted as a disease when we can get treatment immediately, and we're treated just like everybody else who has cancer or diabetes or heart disease. That's when change is officially here. So thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. I'm so proud of all of you. And of course, I love all of you, and I love my brother Tiny and Phil and Dale and all of you. And fight today. And you're with a good group of people that truly, truly love you. And if you need help, you need encouragement, you got to ask. You got to ask, because you got the right people around you that will help you. God bless all of you, and thank you for the opportunity to be here.